Hello, everybody. Welcome here. I'd just like to say thank you to the Jam Factory for inviting me out to this talk. I'd like to thank you all for coming here today on Kaurna territory, and it's good to see some smiley faces here. Mostly smiley faces. Well, actually, you're all smiling. Thank you. So I'll just make a start. I'd just like to start with a list of my tribal descent and affiliates, and they go as follows. Ngarrindjeri, Yaraldi, Tangani, Ramindjeri, Meintangk, Portaruwutj, Peramangk, Nganguruku, Erawirung, and Bunganditj. I was born at Glenelg on Kaurna territory, and this list of tribes, or First Nations, as they're known today, are documented with multiple great and great-great-great-grandparents, and it presents quite a diverse lineage. At times, art world has, at times I've resisted naming all of them on demand, as you will find out later in this presentation, which led to a dispute which led to a creation of one of my major wire sculptures. We'll get back to that later. I like to use these identifiers on my own terms, and so far for my next exhibition, which will be the Salon, the First Nation Weaving Symposium, I will regard myself as Ngarrindjeri Plus. So let's meet the family. This is my great-grandfather Milram. His boyhood name was Wyantan. His English name is Clarence Long. He was known as one of the last of the initiated men of the Kurong. He became really well known in the 1930s for working with an anthropologist by the name of Norman B. Tyndale, and that's the gentleman looking at him there through the glass, Norman. And we have an anonymous technician. Usually they are anonymous, but that's his face. That's what he looked like. And here he is, Milram, in the recording studio, recording the Tangani songs of the Kurong. Here's a basket that he made. Our men wove fishing baskets, nets, and bags, and this style of basket here is called a Ngarrindjeri, which is a men's weapons basket. It carried weapons, tools, and when they were gathering food, it was a food basket as well. Multi-purpose baskets for the men. And this basket here is at the South Australian Museum as part of the collections. Here's a photograph of him that was taken for the museum. And it was at the museum that he left a tremendous amount of knowledge, a legacy, if you will, of language, songs, weaponry, baskets, and culture, all for safekeeping. With great foresight, he fully recognised the threat of the traditional transmission of culture to the younger ones, and he saw this loss and dislocation, what was happening. So he agreed to work with Norman Tyndale on some 40 volumes, I believe, of traditional culture. So yeah, I'm a direct beneficiary of that decision. He became also known as an Aboriginal ethnologist. And I believe this photo was taken at the Kurong. And the club he's holding there is known as a number 7 or a hook club. And those clubs were quite famous along the Murray, into Victoria and the like. And there he is. That's the basket he wove. And here he is at Rauken with the baskets he made for the school and for tourists that used to cross the Lake Alexandrina to the mission. Some people have said that the men didn't weave. He certainly did. And at Rauken they sold to tourists and the like. He made his living shearing and duck hunting, and in the summer months he went to the South Australian Museum and worked there. And this is a photo of his father. He was known as Big Fred. His traditional name was Bunganditj. English name was Fred Long, my great-grandfather. Now he, when he was a young man, he witnessed some terrible things on the frontier, and that made him decide to withdraw from the encroachment and move deeper into the Coorong, which the result being that his son Milarum, the first time he saw a white man, he was aged 6 years old. And this avoidance of the new people meant that Milarum could be initiated and be trained in all that he knew. This photo was published in 1890, and I believe this photo was done at just outside of Galway. And here's an Aboriginal map, a map of South Australia or Southern Australia. It was made by Tyndale with the help of my great-grandfather, Milarum, and he also left very detailed maps of the Coorong. If you read down the bottom, the Yaraldi and the Tangani, and Tangani was our specific mob, right on the Coorong. And it was with Milarum's help that he was able to do this. And it was the basis of the Aboriginal maps we see today. Now, these maps were actually quite important in destroying that convenient myth of aimlessly wandering nomads. And here's a red gum sculpture that I carved to display the 18 different Larakia, or the 18 clans of the Ngarrindjeri nation. And you can see there's 18 different panels within that, and each one, like I said, represents the tribes or clans. Now, the Ngarrindjeri were once known as just one of the clans, but now is like a blanket term for the entire nation, with our capital city being Rauken, the old mission called Point Macleay. Who's that? No, that's me, obviously. Milarum wove baskets, and I wove baskets, weave baskets, but I weave mine out of wire. These pieces here sit at the South Australian Museum with his collection, which I'm really happy about. Earlier this year, the larger one on my lap was displayed with Milarum's basket, the one we saw previously. Very happy about that. That's just great. Now, I didn't train, no one trained me or taught me how to weave. I actually went in and studied his work and worked out how to do it, basically. And we have a word for that in Ngarrindjeri, and it's mratan, which means learning by observation. And I observed and I learnt. Now, these baskets are sculptural representations of the Ngarrindjeri traditional weaves. So they're heavy and impractical, but they're there, and I'm happy about that. Also, this here is a photo taken not far from the armoury where Milarum wove in the 1930s. Yep. Well, so much of the work I do is inspired by the collections that are in the South Australian Museum. Here I am with 2 weapons, and this is at the Netley facility. And here's me with a sister basket. Larala is a Ramindjeri word for circular, so this is a large circular basket. It's also a sister basket where 2 sides are woven separately and brought together. This particular one was woven at Meintangk mission in the 1900s, and that was just a little north of Mannum. The mission no longer exists. Here's me at the Family History Unit in the South Australia Museum, where I studied a lot of the works there, a lot of photos. And a lot of this work I'd never seen until I went there, you know, so family photos. Under my left hand there is my great-great-grandmother, Kanya. And this is a camp at Glenelg. This is where the family would go to Glenelg, Padawalung, and they'd set up camp and start weaving and selling baskets to the tourists. The mob would travel between the Kaurna, the Nganguruku and the Ngarrindjeri territories. And there's Mary again, just a second on the left, down the front. All right, and now we come to my public works. This here is a Jilbruki shield that is at Larakia, Mount Barker. It's carved out of Selleck's Hill marble, and Selleck's Hill being a significant part of the Jilbruki dreaming. It's incorrectly been called a Ghana shield, which it isn't. It's not a Ghana shield. It's a shield that actually represents 5 of the different storytellers that contributed to the story of the Jilbruki. The carving on the left is supposed to represent fire for the Peramangk, and there's 3 separate levels on the right-hand side. They represent water, starting with river water, lake water, and down the bottom, sea or salt water. And each one represents the different storytellers. And the footprints or bird prints going up the centre represent the Ghana. Now, depending on who you spoke to, it was either an ibis, a glossy ibis, or a blue crane. So, they're footprints. So yeah, the Jilbruki epic runs through Ghana territory, through the Ramindjeri territories, the Tangani territories, the Yaraldi territories, and where this stone is, the Peramangk territories. And there it is again, for scale. As you can see, there's dust all over me. This is just a little after it had been finished. Okay, now this head here is carved from Undermutna sandstone. That's from the Flinders Ranges. It's entitled Heading West, and it's a story about our journey into the afterlife. The spirits of the dead and the beliefs of the Ngarrindjeri went west until Cape Jarvis, underwater into Kata and out to Kata to Kangaroo Island, and from Kangaroo Island up into the heavens, into the Milky Way. Our stories as told by my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and the senior men of the time, they said that the spirits of the dead made this specific journey and certainly weren't available for callbacks for cake festivals or corporate events. In fact, a great deal of effort was made to not call them back. So, you know, that's why a lot of mobs don't even mention the voices, the names of the dead for periods of time. This here is a sculpture of a head made out of Karamalka marble from Karamalka on the York Peninsula. It's called Lakesider because I live near a lake. Speak up. You can't, can you hear me? Sorry, everybody, I'll just speak up a little bit more. And this is a carving I've done at Signal Point in Goa. It represents grandmother and child, and it's their place, so they've got their back to the Peramangk Island bridge, and it represents them turning their back to the Peramangk Island dispute that happened in the 1990s, for those that remember the 1990s. The western part of the Peramangk is Tangani country. Here are some red gum carvings that I did for the school at Rauken. Each pole represents a stage by which you can take ideas through to material reality. And here they are installed at the school with my hairy face in front of them. And this one here is a carving that I did for Peramangk country. It's at Spring Lake in Mount Barker, made using chainsaw and chisels. And that's it for scale. That's been oiled once. And there it is in situ. It's aging well, I think. It looks like part of the landscape. Spring Lake. And here's another shot at the Gulwa sculpture. It was graffitied lately, and I don't know whether that was a political thing or somebody's disturbed mind. The culprit still remains at large, wherever they be. I once, when I was down there, heard a lady say, "Oh, that's creepy," as she rode past with her friend on the bike. Maybe it was to her. Maybe she did it. I don't know. And all my larger sculptures are made by from fallen red gum. Most of them come down by storms and are supplied. This is a red gum shield. It's one of 3 that is now, I believe, installed at on Peramangk country in Brighton. Here's a side view of the second one. That's about that big. And I don't have a photo of the third one. Okay. Moving to sketching and drawing. I don't usually sketch for my sculptural work, but I do sketch. For NAIDOC last year, there was the theme was for the elders, and this is some figures that I did for the Rauken school. As you can see, the Rauken church, and there's a pulgi, Ngarrindjeri, a traditional home up the back, and I wanted to do it really simply for the children so that they could, do it at home. It was just paper, scissors, and a pen. Some of them did actually go home and make their own figures, which I'm really glad about. Now, the reason why I did this, I wanted to do pre-colonial Ngarrindjeri, 1800s Ngarrindjeri. I'll just bring up this other one. And the children, they did their own mob, their own, crew, and they called themselves the moderns. So they were the ancient, the old people and the moderns, and they put themselves in amongst the diorama, and it gave them a good sense of historical connection with the elders and with Rauken. A lot of them would put themselves right in front of the church, then a few minutes later they put themselves in front of the Ngarrindjis and then in the church. They're on display at the school, and the kids wrote their names, and one boy, he said, "Oh, I've got to do one of you." So, there's one of me in there, which I'm happy about. This is a Peramangk totem of Mount Barker, spoon-billed in bold style. Okay, now this is a drawing of a character which I've been working on for a while. It's a steampunk character called Nakamaldi Nrutton. Nakamaldi first name, Nakamali means a person who looks, watches or studies all the time. And Ngaratan means learning by observation. So that's his name. And yes, that's a flying squirrel on his hat. And it's part of a graphic novel that I'm working on. This character is a tribute to my great uncle David Unipen, the inventor, who's on the $50 note. Here's more work depicting my family. See the women weaving baskets. I mean, men wove too, but in front of these women, they're sitting on mats and they're weaving. And this is a face from my imagination. Faces from elsewhere, elsewhere, elsewhere. Okay. All right, moving on to textiles. This is a Nori punui, which means a pelican bag. It's made from Hessian upholstery strapping, twine and feathers, and this part of the basket, well, this basket represents the pouch of the nori or pelican. And the same, this represents the beak of the nori. And here I am stitching the panels together for a cloak. Our men, and women, used bone awls for the needles and sinew for the thread. Our men wove twine to make to make nets for fishing, and they actually caught ducks in the nets. And there you can see I made a net out of that mess. Okay, this next photo. Sorry for all the vegans out there. This is 35 possum skins that were used to make a cloak. I sourced these from New Zealand, where they're feral. Now, the natural materials I use in my artwork, usually skins, bones, and echidna quills. And everything that comes from animals is either roadkill or animals that have passed on. Moving on to my wire work. This is a 2.5, maybe 3 foot basket made of speaker wire. This is a sister basket made of galvanized wire. Another wire basket. And another wire basket. A collection of shiny wire baskets. And a collection of not so shiny wire baskets. That's because of oxidization. After a good long period, these, if they're not protected, they start to rust. Okay, the wire warrior, look out. So we come to my major sculpture. This one's entitled the Digitus Vulgaris. It was a grudge piece I made when I was angry at an arts worker who tried to coerce me into using naming all my tribal groups in an artist statement when I didn't want to. She even questioned my Aboriginality when I wouldn't comply, so ta-da! So it was a big up you to all that. So this was created and went all the way up to Darwin for the Salon Des Refuses, and then came all the way back down and giving the finger to practically everybody. I was pretty happy about that. And this will be seen at the First Nations Weaving Symposium, Weaving Symposium. Yeah.
Next year.
This year, yeah.
For the wire.
Yep, yeah. This is one of my first wire works. That's 10 to 15, maybe even 20 metres of chicken wire. It's one of my copper baskets that's in the jam factory right now. This one's called Chieri. It's from recycled power cable from Rauken. It was thrown away. And here's one of my other copper works. This is also in the exhibition. This one, indoor runner-up at the Brighton Sculpture Competition this year. A person said, yeah, well, first runner-up, Robert, that's first loser. I said, no, I don't think of it like that. No, I'm a runner-up. And yeah. So that's in the exhibition as well. And this copper wire, this was a wedding present. That's about that big. Okay, and now we go on to the bookmark restoration project. This is in 2020. Who was Tommy Bookmark? Tommy Bookmark is my great-great-great-grandfather. This art project was informed by historical research into my great-grandfather's great-great-great-grandfather, Tommy Bookmark, who lived in the 1800s. And this list here is some of his aliases that was aliases as a media figure, and it made him a target for police harassment. And the list goes: the notorious Tommy Bookmark, Bookmark Tommy, Aboriginal Bookmark, A.K. Runthel, Tommy Runthel, Tommy Blundell, Bookmark Runthel, and he was also known as the sole survivor of these parts. The mob around that area was called the Bukamako, so we work out that Tommy Bookmark. And this sole surviving comment was actually published in the Renmark Pioneer article in 1904. This is a drawing I did of him as a younger man, before I'd seen any photographs. He's got a cloak on, and over his shoulder is a wikiji, which is a woven rucksack, a traditional thing, but it just had the one strap that went around. And here's another drawing I did of him as an older man. It wasn't until I saw photographs of him that I found out that these were pretty accurate. And this is a bust that I made of him. I realised that I needed something to hang the cloak, which I was going to make. And I knocked this one up overnight because I needed the broad shoulders in it to be solid. So that has a wooden frame, paper and card and twine. I wanted to restore his dignity by endowing him with a sense of leadership and sovereignty, reversing, the degradation of his personhood. I wanted to restore his image from the media fodder mugshot to the man that he would have been without the colonial assault. And this image is me creating media of myself, reversing the 1800s media coverage of him being charged with a murder that he was fully acquitted of. The show trial, known as The Queen versus Tommy Bookmark, did irreparable damage to our family for generations. And this long list. My collaborator on this project, she made a long list. It's a like 50-foot long list of all our family's contact with the state records, the media of the time, and government reportage. State records. Here's me in 2020 in the dock of the Supreme Court, where Tommy was charged and where he stood in the 1800s case. He was acquitted, like I said, and set free, but the damage did irreparable damage. You know, the case, not only to the rest of his life, but future generations of our family. Now this here is me at the old jail cell where he was locked up. So before he was sent to Adelaide to stand trial. The case revolved around alcohol, which was legal at the time for the new Australians and illegal for the Aboriginal people. In 1908, the South Australian Licensing Act became official, meaning that Aboriginal people could not consume alcohol. However, the arrests and imprisonment for drinking were taking place well before that date. In 1967, the Licensing Act finally allowed Aboriginal people to drink, with regards to purchasing alcohol. Now, this photo was taken in the jail cell, which ironically is the back half of the liquor land in the main street of Mannum. Get that? Right, now, I just wanted to say, yeah, the long-term criminalisation of drinking created an Aboriginal criminal class in a state where wine was produced and was famous for it. I inked lots of skulls on the cloak, skulls and broken bottles, showing how that medicating the trauma with alcohol caused self-inflicted trauma. Now this photo is it's our Ngarrindjeri being burnt at Glenelg. It was an effort to drive us out of Glenelg, like you saw the camp photos earlier. Like I said, to drive our mob out of Glenelg. Now this is an official letter that led to that particular strategy, and I'll just read it. Sir, the natives you mention have been about Adelaide for some time past, and I've had some trouble inducing them to leave the city to return to their districts. Inducing. Okay. Now this is a panel on the cloak of a skull and a basket, and it illustrates our pre-colonial relationship with the dead. We loved our relations so much that we carried them around with us. And it is to show that the Ngarrindjeri weren't squeamish about bones. And here's a picture of the completed cloak. It's all these illustrations directly correspond with the letters, with that long reel of connection with the colonial and non-colonial people, all the state records. And this is 92 years of our family history, of one actual line of our family history, going from Tommy's birth to the death of his granddaughter, my great-grandmother. I'll just... that's the cloak.
Robert, maybe take photos?
Yeah. So this is 92 years of one of our family histories. And when I got the skins, I wanted to pay respect to the animals, so I left all the tails on. Okay, if I could sum up the backbone of my work, it's informed by a process of reclamation, of truth, of culture, of restoration of the loss we suffered during the colonial process, and more recently with the stolen generations of my family. And finally, here I am in front of the Supreme Court, a reminder of justice in all its facets. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We've got time for some questions. I'll stand over here at this point. If anyone's got a question, starting in the middle.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say I am a Ngarrindjeri woman and thank you for the gifts that you've given us and your knowledge and for your sharing. Sorry, I'm a little bit overwhelmed.
That's why I do it. I do it.
Very, I guess, similar experience to you in that, I just call myself Ngarrindjeri now because it's too much to pull apart and put back together.
Yep.
I guess what you were alluding to earlier, being different plans, trying to link them all together, and
Yep.
I'm very much still discovering
Yeah.
who I am as a Ngarrindjeri woman.
Excellent.
As a weaver.
Yep.
And I just want to say thank you. I'm going to Brighton tomorrow
All right.
to do some weaving with Auntie Betty Sumner.
Okay.
And I will very much look forward to going to the school and having a look at the work that you do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, this is the reason why I started doing this sort of work is because I was finding out more and more myself. And I started going to the museum in, the early 90s. And I've been in and out ever since. And this bookmark project really fired things up, and it allowed us, through state records and all of the records that my wife and I sorted through, we found out more and more of what happened to our family, But yeah, good luck with the weaving, Thank you.
This might kind of continue on from what you just said. I'm wondering what your hopes and dreams are for Indigenous art in this country and what it might be able to achieve for future generations.
Okay, good question. A cousin of mine, we hadn't seen each other for ages, and he's a carver, and he does a lot of stuff. And he asked me, "Cuz, do you think about our ancestors or our old people when you're carving?" And I said, "Well, no, actually, I think about our younger mob coming through, and quite often I'll leave little things like a drop stitch or something like that in some of my work, so that anybody who wants to learn about it can just go through and say, oh, he left one there, and not just that, but if I can do enough stuff that's really interesting and really compelling, it'll draw kids or anybody who wants to learn and look at it and see what's going on. Like, this cloak is, it's for kids that want to know. And I don't know where this is going to end up. It might end up in an institution. It might stay with the family. I'm not sure. But to answer your question, I think about stuff that is going to be around for a long time. And I like to make things that, are a bit of hard work, so that people who are really serious about learning can come in and just take up after that, and do their own thing.
next to Miller's Rock myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've never seen you lay out your career like you just did there. Again, as a white fellow, I found it quite emotional. I think it's an extraordinary body of work, but what it never really occurred to me until today was that, and I wonder what you think of this, you're probably too humble to say it, but the archival ambitions of Miller to create, to use a museum, to use that
Yep.
archive to create a safe house for his cultural memory, for
Yep.
his language, for his techniques, for his stitches.
Yep.
In a way, your career mirrors that in some ways.
Yep.
Following that path, but also creating an archive for this generation of artists and practitioners
Yep.
and a license to pick things up. That I think is incredibly important and just as empowering as what Miller's archive was for you.
Yep. Yeah. I'm really grateful that he did that. He's left enough for me to really go on with, and anybody else who wants to go and look through his stuff. I found that because we were talking to a couple of older, Uncle Clary Long, his adopted son. He told us a few things about Millerum, but he said that at the time when Millerum was in his 60s, he saw that there weren't many people, because they were busy, the next generation were busy with jazz and the early parts of rock and roll and, and coming into Adelaide and enjoying themselves and all sorts of things. And there was like a generation skip. And if it wasn't for Tyndale, Norman B., who came in, there wouldn't have been that, if it wasn't for their relationship, there wouldn't be anything of his stuff in there. The really interesting thing about their relationship, just by the way, is that one of the first people that Millerum actually met was the father of a young woman called Mary Barnett, and that was Tyndale's mother. And he was 6 years old when he met Tyndale's mother. And the story is that he had a pair of trousers made for him so he could play. They could play together. And it wasn't until he was in his 60s that Norman B came to Rauken with all his studies, and they found each other. So the relationship went on from there. I'm really grateful that he did that. I'm really grateful that he's given me some, shoulders to stand on, really, in the way of culture. And when it comes to the work, like I said before, I really like to work hard. Like the finger, that's 2 kilometres of galvanised wire, and that's a lot of work. And I think that anybody who wants to weave later on will look at that and go, well, this old fellow, not that old, but this fellow can do it. Let's see what I can do. But they can do it out of something else. Leave their mark. So I think it's about this big. Yeah. Yeah.
I think Auntie Ellen last week spoke the central theme of what she was doing was for the next generation. That same kind of thread. We've got time for one more question, maybe. Otherwise, can you all join me in thanking Robert with a big round of applause?
Thank you.